So, a fine Monday morning. Welcome to all our throngs of listeners and viewers. They're getting bigger all the day, by the week, Pat. You know that, don't you?
I know that, yes, yes.
They're very
Yes.
tall. What I mean by that is they're very tall people looking at us now.
They're very big. They're all over 6'4".
Anyway, I'd encourage people, and I keep forgetting to do this, so I'll remember now that if you like this, and if you don't like this, we want you to hit the subscribe button at the bottom of your screen. Do that now. Do it now, or you'll forget about it later on. Okay, right. So, tell me about the weather, Pat, because I'd feel unlucky if you didn't tell me about the weather.
Jude, as I said to you on many occasions, I think this year I should have bought a boat rather than used a car because in Donegal, I don't know where the hell it's like up where you are, but it's just rain non-stop. And I'm serious, it's been unbelievable. Yesterday was atrocious. Jude, if you suffered from seasonal affective disorders, isn't that SADSM, isn't that what they call it? Yesterday was dark all day, and really was. If you're prone to depression, I'm deadly serious about this, it would have given you depression, because I would imagine sitting locked in, sometimes on Sunday, myself and the missus might say, we'll go for a wee drive, just get out of the house. Yesterday, what was the point? It was just a bucket of rain all day, and the wind was howling.
You wouldn't see it. All you'd see would be a streaming windscreen.
And you'd be in the car, you'd be driving over puddles on the sides of the roads. Not much fun in that.
Not really. Yeah. Okay, well, that's our woes.
For the day over,
enunciated. Let's go and look at some of the political stories. Can we start with Gordon Lyons? Gordon Lyons is a minister for sport. Am I right in saying he's a minister for communities as well?
Yeah, I think so. Sport and communities and sport, yeah.
So he's a member of the DUP, and therefore he's a fine, honest, upright man. Would that be a reasonable description?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I was watching the BBC News yesterday. I don't know who got it first, whether it was BBC, the Irish News, or whatever. But I think it was, in fairness, I think it was the BBC. I think it was Darren Marshall. I heard the report yesterday.
Yeah.
And anyway, bottom line is, Gordon Lyons, when he took over, he said he would be, I am not the minister for one sport, I am a minister for all sports type thing, and so on. Anyway, he has been minister for sport for 6 months, and he has yet to attend a single GAA game. Now, there's some talk of, I'll get the defence thing in first, that he's a committed Christian and doesn't want to go on Sunday. Look, Jude, there's plenty of matches played on Saturdays and so on, so we'll ignore that. He's been to cricket, soccer, rugby. I think he's been at 20 soccer grounds so far. He was out, I think, watching tennis and either at the Paris Olympics or shortly after the Paris Olympics. He's been at the Northwest 200. But you'd think with Armagh winning the All-Ireland and with the success of various Ulster teams and so on, that somewhere in a 6 months tenure, he would have found a way to make it to one GAA match. But he hasn't. Now, suddenly, he apparently, according to Darren Marshall in yesterday's BBC report, he's now accepted, a week later, after I presume the BBC raised the issue, that he's going to some GAA match in September. Now, what the GAA match is in September, I don't know. But Claire Hanna says it's not good enough, that it simply isn't good enough, that he's had 6 months, and that the GAA, she said, is the biggest sporting organisation on the island of Ireland by far. That's the first thing. And secondly, she says it's a backbone of so many communities. And for a minister for sport to turn around and say, like, if he can go to a hockey match and he can go to a rugby match and he can go to 20 soccer matches and he can go to cricket, let's get 3 men and a dog. So, but he can't go to GAA. Like, I think as a nationalist, people will read into that what they obviously see.
Well, I think you're right, Pat. And what you see is somebody who's clearly prejudiced against the GAA. But keep in mind that he's concerned not about nationalist reaction, but unionist reaction. And his constituency, I would imagine, maybe I'm being too harsh on them, but essentially I think the unionist community, by and large, I'm sure there are exceptions, but by and large, they're not really interested in the GAA, and they're a wee bit suspicious of it. The singing of Ireland Avain and the flying of the tricolour, in combination with its sort of history that it was founded as part of a sort of a cultural and sporting revival in Ireland. So he's playing the tune that he knows will go down well with his local community, the people who elect him. Whether that's good enough, whether you should be able to rise above that, or whether as a leader you should be showing, look, everybody has their own sport that brings them out in throngs. It happens that the GAA is the one that brings out nationalists and Republicans. I should be out there showing that I'm part of them. But the consolation I take from all this, Pat, is every time he doesn't go to a GAA match, he's furthering the cause of republicanism and hastening the day when there will be a border poll. Is that
Jude, let's be clear, Jude, and you know far better than I do. Everything. I think the template or the temperature gauge for every unionist politician is, I don't want to be considered a Lundy, and they're more concerned. Remember the famous one about Paisley when he got thrown out of the European Parliament when he started heckling the Pope. As somebody pointed out to me, I thought this disgrace and brought shame on us, in Northern Ireland type thing. And somebody said to me, Pat, would you grow up? I was young and innocent at the time. He says, he doesn't give a shit about what you think as a nationalist or anybody else. He doesn't give a shit about the people of Ireland think. He is playing back to the base in Ballymena, and they're going fair play to Ian standing up for us. And every time, I presume Gordon Lyons is probably thinking, I don't want to be seen to go into a GA match. It's not going to play well in my community. I'm going to be considered a Lundy. And that's it's a sort of zero-sum game for unionist politicians. If they seem to be reaching out at all, it doesn't play well in the community, and that's their big problem.
It doesn't exactly. It doesn't play well in their community, and it plays very badly in the nationalist community, which means that the nationalist community will be eventually throwing up their hands and saying this isn't going to work. Mind you, he's taken on. If we're talking about football, particularly, not hurling now, but in terms of the GAA, if we're talking about football, football always has been divided. No, not always, but it's one of the most divisive sports in the island of Ireland. For example, the IFA and the FAI are two seriously different groups. And yet most sports in the island of Ireland are played on an all-Ireland basis. And you see that with hockey.
You see it with rugby, you see it with hockey, you see it with boxing. Yeah.
So would you guess, why is that, Pat? Why is it that soccer is the one thing that they seem... remember at one stage they had a cup of some kind that was cross-border.
Blacksnit Cup or something way back, and so on, and it was quite successful. But I don't know what. I think the Troubles intervened in the big time. Did somebody's bus get burned out or something? I can't remember, Jude. Yeah. But so on. Remember, I think I can't remember. There was a big breakup between AFA. I think was nearly running the show. Back in the day, and the FA in Dublin took exception to some of the things they did. And I think it was the Republic broke away from the North in that one. Dude, I'm open to correction. I definitely am. But anyway, remember Harry Cavan? I think it was. He was very much. Harry was no friend, put it like this, of nationalism, and he was on the world. He was on FIFA, but he didn't do much to help Derry City or anything like that. So there's always been suspicion of, that there was a lot of decisions back in the day that were sectarian. So I don't know. Bottom line of it all, Jude, as for Gordon Lyons might be a very decent man, and a lot of people say he is, and I don't know what sort of person he is. But Jude, he's been minister for 6 months, and he hasn't shown up in a GAA game. You can read. It's very simple to read into that. What a lot of nationalists are thinking.
Yeah. I wonder if he's aware of, even medium term, the damage that's doing to unionism. If in fact he was to, I think if he had done it gracefully at the beginning and, attended the matches, roughly the same number of Gaelic matches as he would, say, attend soccer matches for Northern Ireland, I think a lot of people would have said, good for you. That's fair enough, I'm a unionist, but it doesn't seem to harm him too much. He's still a unionist minister. I think if they'd established that, a lot of nationalists would have been saying, well, fair play to Gordon Lyons. He's not afraid to be the minister.
Look, he was invited Armagh from his own jurisdiction. Are playing in the All-Ireland final. 83,000 people. BBC covers it. Even American TV were there, whatever. And he got a personal invitation from the Jarlath Burns, as far as I know, or the organisation that Jarlath Burns heads up.
Yeah.
He said he had another engagement, another diary engagement. Like, I would love to know, could somebody check what he was doing that Sunday? Jude, like, talk about, own goals. Like, what was he doing that was so important that Sunday that he could? And the other thing as well, why didn't he? If he doesn't really want to go to a GAA match, why doesn't he get it out of the way early after being appointed? Like Arlene Foster went to a match. I think it was Donegal versus Fermanagh about 2018 or 2019. Somebody can check that out. Edwin Poots went to a GAA match. What do you call her? Emma Little Pengilly went to a school and had a camogie ball or some bloody thing. So what's Gordon's problem?
It's sort of like, I mean, it's sort of like you think it was if somebody didn't know the circumstances, they say this is a skit of some kind, that he would go to, and I won't go to this match. Oh, she went to it, and oh God, she got very excited. Arlene went to this game. I just think it's ridiculous. The fact is that he's not getting involved with community development or bringing the two communities together. In fact, if anything, he's driven a wedge between them, which that's his affair. Tell me this, are you pleased that he's not going to these games? Is there a little part in the secret parts of your heart, Pat, that is
there's a part of me there's a part of me, I know when all these people, they sort of, I always call them Dublin Ford types, they get up my nose, that, that the nationalists in the north are just looking for offence. Look, the evidence is bloody well there. See when somebody reaches out to like from the unionist community, I will meet them halfway. But see, I have no time for that sort of stuff. Like, simple fact, 6 months in office, hasn't attended one GA game. What am I supposed to interpret that from? I know what I interpreted. I'm even scared to say it out loud in case I get sued for a label or some bloody thing. But here's the thing, Jude. Can you imagine if Michelle O'Neill or the late Martin McGuinness had said, I am not going to a hockey match or I'm not going to a rugby match because that's the Protestant Ulster thing. They'd have been lambasted. And rightly so, by the way.
He hasn't Pat, to be fair to him, I don't think he has said, I'm not going to the GAA match.
No, I'm not saying he did saying that. But here's the point. Say they sort of took, Martin McGuinness hadn't been to a single Northern Ireland match if he was Minister for Sport. I think somebody would read into it, wait a minute, Martin, if you haven't gone to a single Northern Ireland match, if they're playing England and Martin's the Minister for Sport and hadn't gone there, there'd be some people asking serious questions. Hey, come on, we can read into that ourselves. What's going on here?
Why do you think nationalist Republican politicians should speak up about Gordon Lyons and what he hasn't done then, or not?
Well, Claire Hanna said it's not good enough. Yeah. Jude, we're supposed to be building bridges. We're supposed to have a divided society, and the only way forward is if we sort of meet each other halfway. I don't think Gordon's track record so far. It took him, by the way, it took them a week to respond, his department, to respond to the BBC. The BBC asked him why he hadn't. It took him a week. And then he said two things. He said he's going to some match in September. How convenient. Where'd that come out of? And secondly, he intends holding a reception for Armagh sometime, whenever, for winning the All-Ireland. How very convenient that now these two things are so. I wonder if nobody had mentioned, if no one had mentioned, would either of those things have come out? But by the way, Jude, the very least they could do Armagh. Well, what about 30,000, 40,000 people for Armagh? We're at the All Ireland final. It's the biggest sporting organisation. Hurrah! Do you want kudos for recognising something that's staring you in the face?
Well, poor Gordon. He probably figures he's doing the right thing in terms of being a unionist politician, but I think we all know long term he's.
So isn't it a question all the time? It's playing to their own gallery is more important than reaching out.
Well, I suppose you see, short term it's good for them, and many politicians tend to think in short term, and it is good. Short term is more likely to get elected again, but long term, medium term, bad news. Bad news, I would say. Okay, let's move to a slightly more serious matter. Although it's historical. In recent days, there's been further investigation of an area where they think they might find the body of Captain Robert Nairac, who you may remember, a lot of people remember, was he a member of the SAS or was he in some other regiment?
No, I think, well, he could have been, but he was certainly an undercover agent. I think he might have been SAS, yeah.
He was. The IRA got him when he was in I can't hardly believe this. He was in a South Armagh pub singing rebel songs, and they eventually grabbed him and took him away and interrogated him and shot him. Does that? Well, I have two questions, Pat. Does that seem a terribly cruel thing to you, in your view?
It is
Terribly
just
sad story.
it is, and apparently he was a very brave man. That they say he was tortured, but he didn't give. I presume they had other agents, and
That's something that has come up quite frequently, and I just would be interested in knowing where did you read that, and how did the people know? Because I would assume.
Dude, it's one of these urban myths. Hey, dude, let's get out in the open. I remember being told many years ago that his body had been fed through a grinder or something.
Oh yes,
And
yes, that's one of the top.
yeah, yeah. So, but apparently they're claiming that didn't happen. I remember being told too. Now, these are all urban myths, Jude. I don't know how much. In fact, I don't know how anybody can stand over, but I'm just telling you that's what I've been told. He was killed in 1977 during the trouble, Jude. But hey, Jude, it was a seriously dirty war. It really was. There was all sorts of undercovers. Remember, there was shoot to kill. There was a whole lot of nationals getting shot dead. And then there was Jude. There was almost a conveyor belt at the courts. The judges in London didn't need evidence to put nationals in the way for a long time. So it was a really dirty war. And Nairac, Jude, the very fact, why I sort of admire him, is he had the balls to go into South Armagh, anti-IRA territory, with an English accent. Dude, Jesus Christ.
I'm assuming he assumed an Irish accent.
What the mentality was there, Jude? Because that's like me going into West Bell or Shankill Road with a Donegal sort of accent and and with a Fenian name. Like, it's inevitable.
Pat, if he wasn't if he was speaking with an English accent, I wouldn't describe that as very brave. I'd describe that as foolhardy or self-destructive.
Absolutely.
As you say, he wouldn't go into
Shankill Road
or any sort of loyalist area with an accent like yours. Although I don't know, you probably get away with it because your accent's near enough to being a northern accent. It might be a space between your eyes. He was awarded the George Cross posthumously for his bravery. I'd ask this question: how do they know? Now, the only people who could have known would have been IRA people who were there when he was killed. So, was the British establishment taking the word of the IRA and then, on the basis of that, awarding him a posthumous George Cross?
Here's the thing, too. I didn't remember this. 3 men were convicted of his murder. A 4th was done, I think, for manslaughter. A 5th was done for kidnapping. A 6th was done for withholding information, and a 7th apparently escaped and headed off to America and has never been found. If they've done 3 people for murder, I presume they must have got some sort of information about what happened. Like you would presume so, anyway.
Yeah. Was there talk about him being involved? They thought he was involved in some massacre. What was it?
Was the Miami? I think it was the Miami show band. There was a claim that there was a guy there with an English accent, and he was. I think one of the survivors of the man said he heard an English accent, and it seemed that the boy with the English accent was directing things. And whether that was true or whether the connection, like Jude, in a situation like that, who the hell knows? But they said Nairac was active in that area at that time.
Well, one other thing, well, there's 2 things. One very quickly. The fact of the matter is that Robert Nairac was a spy. I mean, he literally was a spy in South Armagh. A lot was made of the fact that he was an English Catholic.
Yeah.
And that
he went to
Ampleforth and then Oxford. So he was an upper class British Catholic or English Catholic. And he got the George Cross. I think actually there's a degree of sectarianism there where you would say he was a finer fellow if he was a Catholic. And there's sort of a class consciousness if you say, and he went to Oxford as well. So it's all part of that kind
and he went, of course, he went to Sandhurst as well, Dr. Collins.
That's right. Well, you need to do that if you're going to make progress in the army, I guess. The final question I'd ask about this, Pat, is why is this a story now? Why are they digging for his remains now?
Well, I can't remember the name of the guy, but he says he's the guy in charge of finding victims' remains of the disappeared. I can't remember his name, but he said they had received credible information or the possibility of credible information. And it's this place in County Louth they're going digging. So I presume they must have got someone, maybe some old IRA guy with a conscience, or says, "Look, this is where we buried him." Who knows, Jude? I don't know.
I frankly doubt that, to be honest with you, because I think the Republicans have, for quite a while now, been as anxious as anybody to get the disappeared rediscovered and buried, given a decent burial. I think that's the decision they've made. They don't want that kind of thing hanging on. Now, it may be, as you say, some old guy has had remorse and has blown the whistle. But I actually am cynical enough to think there's going to be an election in the South. And
that's very cynical.
To bring, is it really very cynical? God Almighty! I was watching documentary about presidents and so on I think it was Channel 4 production. But the stuff that was going on in the background was amazing. I mean, the motivation for people and why they made decisions they made, the public wouldn't have, for the life of them, would never have thought of them. And that seems to be an obvious one. You want to get, I think the Southern media would like to reestablish that link between Sinn Féin and the IRA, and especially to highlight the killings which might be seen as gruesome or particularly cruel or whatever. I think that's important to emphasize that. And the second thing is that, this thing about him being, I remember at the time the Catholic cardinal pleaded for information about him. I think it was an English Catholic. I find that distasteful that people would, on that basis, say, "Oh, that's a terrible pity what happened to him," or even that he went to Oxford on that basis, that they'd feel, a fine young man. I mean, that's class distinction. It's religious distinction, and the fact is, he was a spy. So God rest him, and I hope he's in heaven now. But at the same time, I can't think of a more clear-cut case for somebody being killed during a conflict than being caught as a spy. And he wasn't the first spy that was shot either.
Yeah. By the way, you reminded me something. Remember Roy Greenslade? Yeah, he was the editor of the Daily Mirror.
Oh, yes.
Roy, the first person I ever heard using the term "a hierarchy of victims" was Roy. That's many, many years ago. I was at some function or other in Derry, and he said it. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's true. Judy, if they kept shooting people from the big housing estates, like Yada or Bogside or Cregan or somewhere like West Belfast or Lenadoon or whatever, grand. But see, when they started shooting the professionals, the accountants and the lawyers and the doctors and the captains in the army, and there was a whole different dichotomy with it. There's all sorts of news bulletins and all the rest of it. It's amazing.
Well, that's the basis on which the IRA conducted its campaign in England. They said, when it hardly comes to Hardy, most of the people of Britain really don't care that much. They're over there, the paddies. But when there's a bomb in London or a bomb in Birmingham or somewhere, naturally enough, you would say they're outraged and horrified. So they see these things on the screen. They know they'll be going on for ages, and they're sort of sorry, but not too sorry. But if it happens near their own doorstep, it changes things completely.
Absolutely.
Anyway, okay, let's leave that and move to the question of Harris and Harris. It sounds like an accountant's firm or maybe a solicitor's firm. Harris and Harris.
Harris and Harris, looking after your financial needs for the next 25 years.
It could be a Netflix thing, like what was that? Better Call Saul.
Well, Better Call Saul. I've never watched that, but
watch it. Watch it. It's so good, so funny. Anyway, he's a lawyer, and the guy writing it, I think, is Stephen Collins. Am I right? Did he write?
Yes, you are correct. Yeah.
So this comes with a health warning. Stephen Collins is not noted as a man who spends many of his columns praising Republicans or Sinn Féin. He says that there's odds on now that the Harris in England, in Ireland, and the south of Ireland, and in America will both do the business come next November. That there's likely to be an election here, and there's definitely going to be one in America, with Kamala winning the White House and Simon winning the Taoiseach's office. Would you go along with that? Does that seem reasonable?
Well, what he's saying is they're now certainly, and far more, what we say, better position.
Yeah.
Back to the two things. Let's right sometime about what was it, about April, Jude? I remember, or earlier, maybe even February, back in. Remember, Sinn Féin were about 35% or something like that. They were, and Fine Gael at one stage were up nearly 20% on the percentage polls behind them. Mary Lou was riding high on the opinion polls, and all the rest of it. And it seemed Sinn Féin were nailed on to be the next government and so on. Now, a whole lot of things have happened, but particularly this immigration thing has caught them out on a certain level. But the other side of the story, the positive side for the government, Jude, every quarter now, this last while, despite all the other things, turmoil, the Irish government are returning massive big surpluses in the economy, and they're throwing money at a lot of things right now. And I always think there's two Irelands, and I've said this a million times. So let's get it. I think there's a lot of middle class people in Ireland who are saying, "Hey, look, wait a minute, let's not overturn the apple cart. Things are going very well here." And there's a growing number of people saying, look, I mightn't like some of the things they're doing, but hey, someone, maybe if they keep going, maybe they can sort out the health system. Maybe they can sort out the housing situation. They're building more houses. They're building more hospitals. Jude, we have something like a 5% population growth in this last 10, 15 years, which is unbelievable. So like that brought problems. Jude, I have never seen, like, for even local stores now saying vacancies apply within. I even know my next door neighbour, who's a potato man, his daughter was telling me that he's struggling trying to find workers, to sort out his potatoes and stuff like that. So, Jude, there is full employment. So that's the background.
That's important, all right. Stephen Collins attributes the prospects to a great extent to Simon Harris himself. He says that where Leo Varadkar was sort of cold or detached, or people didn't feel warmly towards him.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Maybe he knows that's right. I always quite liked, on a personal basis, I always kind of liked Leo Varadkar. But they say that with Harris's personality, he has crisscrossed the South immediately after being made Taoiseach, and he has won hearts and minds like nobody's business. That amazes me. I don't find him a character, or somehow his image as appealing.
Yeah.
You find his image appealing?
No, Jude, but sometimes. But I found that over the years, Jude, some people on television, when you met them in person, they were so different. Apparently, Harris, and a person, is very down to earth, very warm and friendly, and goes out of his way to chat to people and so on. As you said, Leo apparently had sort of lost the ability to connect. But now I was at a function, McGill Summer School, a couple of years back, and Leo was there, and he wasn't unfriendly, but he wasn't warm. He wasn't warm and cuddly. He didn't reach out to people. He stood on his own sort of thing and so on. And I thought, he didn't work the room. That's what I mean. Harris would work the room and so on. Anyway, that's the bottom line for Harris. But he's the youngest Taoiseach. He seems to have bundles of energy, and he switched it around. And he does seem to have struck a chord with a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's despite the fact that he doesn't look a healthy guy. Like, he's young. No. I think he suffers from Crohn's disease, which is no joke.
He's 6'2" or something, and he looks washed out a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it has a sort of a crouching posture, whereas Leo was all sort of like a rugby player almost, the way.
Yeah, exactly.
But are you essentially agreeing with Stephen Collins that Simon Harris is likely to lead Fine Gael into government again?
I do actually. But by the way, Jude, even when Sinn Féin were way up at the top, I still thought the same. Jude, the combined forces of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and Labour, or whatever, or the Greens, would always outplug Sinn Féin.
Yeah. It'll be some test for Mary Lou, because that's.
But the other Harris too, Jude. What's your opinion?
The other Harris. Well, we talked about this the last day, I think, and I keep thinking about it. I like her a lot. I like her. She's a lively, funny, sort of good sense of humor and so on. But I feel maybe she laughs too much. Maybe lacks a degree of presidential gravitas, or not even gravitas, weight. And I keep thinking of that guy, Walls, who's her vice presidential candidate, along with her running partner. He's not. He's a very smiley, jumpy around guy and clapping his hands and so on as well. But he's a big guy, and somehow he comes across as the kind of guy you trust with stuff. He looks sort of more grown up looking than she is. And I worry about the fact that there's so many good people. If you stop to think about it, the Clintons, the Obamas, all those people were at the launch or the Democratic convention. There was virtually nobody from the hierarchy of the Republican Party at their announcement that Trump was going to lead them. So they should be in a very good position. She's certainly got a wealth of talent. I mean, that guy, Pete Buttigieg, I think he's a terrific speaker. Josh Shapiro is also very effective. And there are others. There's an Irish guy, he's not Irish, but his name's Kelly or something from Arizona. A lot of people are very, very good. So there's a strong team in the background there. And there's enthusiasm among Democrats that wasn't there before Joe Biden took a back seat. But I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I'm totally convinced that I can see her as being a president.
But Judy, here's the point. I would back in about 6 months again. Joe Biden, after that, well, not 6 months, more like 3 months ago, that debate with Harris or with Trump, Jude, it was certain Trump was heading to the White House. That was a certainty.
That's right.
Even Nancy Pelosi said the path for the White House was rose strewn for Trump, because it was so. Kamala Harris has turned that around big time. In fact, she's on ahead on certain. Now, it's not a shoe and far from it, and no politics. God knows what's going. But at one stage, Trump was a cert. He's not a cert anymore. That's a big turnaround.
Well, that's good. That's good. All right. There's a similarity between the two Harrises in terms of how they moved in after the leader retired. When Leo Varadkar retired, Harris was in like a shot. Before anybody could move, he apparently had contacted people and he had support, and that was it. Harris, Kamala Harris, as soon as Joe Biden retired, boom, she was right in there and getting support all right. Very quick, almost.
But you look at Harris. At that stage, I think 13 or 14 TDs Fine Gael TDs had said they were going to not contest the next election. And look, he's got rid of his main contenders. Simon Coveney's gone, and Leo Varadkar's gone. The field's nearly clear for him now.
That's right. So it could. It could be that both Harrises, as Stephen Collins would say, are likely to get there. Anyway, we're in the last minute, Pat. Last Friday, I was cut off in midstream. I was saying something. I forget what it was. It was something very, very wise.
It was very wise, and your words of wisdom were lost in the ether.
Do you want to start saying something, and then whenever you're cut off, they'll think you're going to say something sensible?
No, by the way, we keep the book of the week for Friday from here
only once
a week
per week. We can't be spoiling people. Okay, Pat.
Exactly.
Good talking to you again.
And you, Jude. Bye.
Keep the faith. Keep the faith.